Most commercial airplanes have a service life of 20 to 30 years, that going up to around 40 for general aviation aircraft, freighters, and military aircraft. But some airplanes refuse to die. One of those is our subject today, the Douglas DC-3. The beginnings of the Douglas commercial line of airplanes would begin in 1933. Around this time, a TWA Fokker trimotor had crashed due to weather seeping into the layers of wood in the wings. Because of this, the FAA placed strict regulations on the use of wood in the wings of commercial airliners. Boeing was the first to come up with a solution. This was the Model 247. The Model 247 was a two-engine, all-metal monowing airplane, but Boeing had reserved the production of the 247 for United Airlines. So TWA put out a bid to 5 different manufacturers for a 12-seat, all-metal aircraft that could fly on one engine if needed. Donald Douglas was initially reluctant to participate. He had doubted that there would be a big enough market to sell 100 airplanes, the number needed to cover development costs, but he participated anyways. He submitted a design consisting of an all-metal, low-wing, twin-engine aircraft seating 12 passengers, a crew of 2, and a flight attendant called the DC-1. The DC-1 exceeded TWA's expectation, despite it only having 2 engines, because of the controllable pitch propellers. But it wasn't perfect, so they improved the design. They ended up coming up with the Douglas DC-2. The DC-2 featured a longer fuselage, more powerful engines, and could carry 14 passengers. TWA was impressed with the design and ended up placing an order for 20, but the DC-2 was not the final version. That was Chapter 2, the DC-3. The DC-3 was a more modernized version of the prior DC-2 aircraft. The DC-3 was originally designed as a 14-berth sleeper version of the DC-2. The DC-3 had several notable changes. These include replacing the DC-2's 775 horsepower Wright R1820 piston engines with Pratt & Whitney R1830 piston engines. The DC-3 was also faster, had a longer range, was more reliable, and more comfortable compared to the original DC-2. But right as production started to ramp up, the world would be drafted into war. Chapter 3, World War II. As World War II hit, Douglas immediately stopped production of civilian airliners. They shifted focus to the armed forces. The U.S. Army Air Force needed a cargo and paratrooper airplane. Douglas responded by taking the DC-3, stripping the interior seats and fittings out, adding a cargo door, a cargo hoist, and lowering the floor. This version was designated the C-47 Skytrain, also known as the Goonie Bird. Some of these were converted from DC-3s destined to civilian operators. The C-47 and RD-4 naval version were vital to the success of many Allied campaigns, especially those in the jungles of New Guinea and Burma. These airplanes made it possible to counter the light-moving Japanese forces. They also played a role in flying the hump between China and India, as well as the Berlin airlift, before the role was taken over by the larger Douglas C-54 and Boeing C-97. The C-47 is most well known for dropping 50,000 paratroopers during the Normandy invasion. The C-47 was also operated by the Royal Air Force under the Lend-Lease program, where 2,000 C-47s were operated as C-47 Dakotas. The C-47 was also used as a glider tug and became a glider itself with the Douglas XCG-17. The C-47 served in every front of World War II. Chapter 4, Post-War Use. After World War II, the U.S. Air Force continued to use the C-47. The Strategic Air Command used them until 1967, and the 6th Special Operations Squadron flew upgraded versions until 2008. During the Indo-Pakistan War, both countries used the Goonie Bird to transport their troops and supplies. The C-47 was also used during the Korean War as a troop transport and cargo transport. But the most notable use in the armed forces after World War II was the Vietnam War. The C-47 was used as an electronic warfare airplane. This version was nicknamed the Electric Goonie. The C-47 was also used as a gunship. This was the AC-47 Spooky or Puff the Magic Dragon. The C-47 continued to be used by the United States Armed Forces until 1975, when the last units were retired and placed in storage at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base near Tucson, Arizona. But it wasn't just the Army that used C-47s post-war. After World War II, thousands of surplus C-47s of all types were put up for sale as surplus. These airplanes were stripped of their Army equipment and sold on the civilian market. market. Many of these airplanes served as freighters, but some of them were converted to airliner configuration. They were also used as skydiver transports, water bombers, and smoke jumper aircraft. Some of these were fitted with skis or floats to be used in more remote areas. Along with the twin Beech-18, the C-47 became a very popular bush plane in Canada and Alaska. Chapter 5: Conversions and Other Production. The C-47 was not just produced by Douglas. Lisanov in Russia produced the Li-2, a licensed copy of the DC-3, and Nakajima of Japan produced the L-2D under license as well. Conroy, yes, the same Conroy as Aerospace Lines, produced two versions. The first was the Conroy Turbo 3. Two of these were produced. These were made out of standard DC-3 airframes, but the standard Pratt & Whitney R1830 piston engines were replaced with Rolls-Royce Dart Mk512 turboprop engines from a Vickers Viscount donor. The prototype would later be converted into the Conroy Tri-Turbo 3, which I will get to in a minute. The second Turbo 3 was actually named the Super Turbo 3 as it was converted from a Super DC-3 airframe, but this had very little difference from the standard Turbo 3. The last Conroy aircraft was the Tri-Turbo 3. This was made from using the first Turbo 3 prototype and adding a third Dart engine to the nose, creating a tri-motor aircraft. This aircraft would be destroyed in a fire in 1986, but a second aircraft was built out of the wreckage of the first. Chapter 6: The DC-3 Now. The DC-3 is still in service as of 2024. One of the main reasons for this is Basler. Basler makes turboprop conversions of the DC-3, much like Conroy did. These are called the BT-67. They are created by adding Pratt & Whitney PT-6A turboprop engines, strengthening and lengthening the airframe, installing upgraded avionics, and modifying the wings and wingtips. These conversions extend the C-47 service life while making the airplane more suitable for the modern aviation industry. The BT-67 is not only in service with civilian operators, but many government operators as well. These include the United States Forest Service, the Colombian Air Force, National Police of Colombia, Salvadorian Air Force, and the Armed Service of Guatemala, Mali, Mauritania, and Thailand. The original piston-powered C-47 is still in service with the South African Air Force. Many civilian operators run the DC-3 as well. The most notably include Buffalo Airways, Florida Air Cargo, North Star Air, Ken Boric Air, and a well-known former operator is Kalata Air, which flew them out of the former Ford bomber plant at Willow Run. It's estimated there are 184 active DC-3s operating. This does not include museum-owned flying aircraft, stored, derelict, or displayed airframes. The C-47 that led the Normandy invasion, that's all brother, is still around and owned by the Commemorative Air Force. Well, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next video. See you later!